Hey friends, Gary here, and today I want to share why you should use micro four thirds camera for landscape photography. Many people think that you need a camera with larger sensor for the best landscape photography experience. However, from my own personal experience, that is not true. I think micro four thirds can provide you with both the performance and image quality that you need to create stunning, beautiful landscape photos. Let me explain. First, let's talk about image quality, and right away people will say with larger sensor you'll get some benefits, especially better dynamic range and better resolution. And that may be true, but right now let me share some sample photos taken using my micro four thirds cameras and let these sample photos speak for themselves. And right away I will say that these pictures are taken using my older micro four thirds cameras, so they only have 16 megapixel resolution or sometimes 20 megapixel resolution. Not really that high in terms of sensor resolution, to be honest, but as you can see, it is more than enough for digital viewing, for sharing in social media, viewing on your computer, on websites, things like that. Unless you really need to print on a very large medium, I don't think resolution matters that much. Speaking of dynamic range, with these micro four thirds RAW files, you can really work on the shadow and highlight, recover some details and recover some blown highlight, things like that. I think it is more than enough. Probably not as good as the high-end full-frame cameras out there or medium format, but that's not the point. The point here is not the best image quality and performance, but something that is more than good enough. Next, let's talk about depth of field. With larger camera sensor, you will have to stop down the aperture a lot to get sufficient depth of field, which is what you want in landscape photography. Remember, with landscape you want more things in focus. This is not portrait photography. You don't want that blurry background blur kind of thingy most of the time. So yeah, with larger format, the characteristics is that it will produce less depth of field. And with micro four thirds, it's the opposite. With the smaller sensor, you get by default more depth of field, so you don't have to stop down the aperture a lot. Usually you can just shoot at f4 or f5.6, sometimes f8 with micro four thirds, as opposed to maybe f11 or f16 with full frame camera. Now you might be asking, hey Gary, what is the benefit of not having to stop down the aperture too much? Does it even matter in landscape photography? And the benefit is flexibility in terms of exposure. So remember, when you are stopping down the aperture, you will also lose the light that is coming into the lens, into the sensor, and that means you have to reduce your shutter speed. And with slower shutter speed, your options are limited. But with micro four thirds, because you don't have to stop down the aperture too much, it opens up the possibility of doing handheld landscape photography without the need of tripod. So yeah, this is especially beneficial if you are just shooting static scenery that doesn't have any kind of movement in it. I think with handheld landscape photography, it's just more convenient and more practical. Sometimes you don't even have to carry your tripod with you, which is a good thing. And that leads me nicely into the next point, which is smaller and lighter gear. When you are doing landscape photography, most of the time you need to walk and hike for a few minutes, even sometimes up to a few hours until you reach your vantage point, your shooting location. And when you are doing this hiking, walking thing, when your cameras and lenses and other gears are heavy, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. Your heavy camera and lens will make you tired, will burden you down, and by the time you reach the vantage point when you wanna set up your shots, you're already not motivated because you just wanna rest after carrying those heavy cameras and lenses. With micro four thirds camera format, because of the smaller sensor, now you have the options to choose smaller cameras and lenses that won't weigh as much as if you are using larger camera formats, so it's gonna be better for those long hikes until you reach your vantage point. Speaking about lenses, my next point is the sheer amount of Micro Four Thirds lens selection for landscape photography. Let's begin with the kit lens. Over here, I have the Panasonic Lumix 12 to 32mm kit lens that usually comes with Panasonic Lumix cameras. They're not my first choice for landscape photography, but they can get the job done. The image coming out from this lens is quite sharp and quite contrasty. There's not a whole much of flaws when it comes to this lens, except for the occasional flare and ghosting when you are shooting into a bright sunlight. But otherwise, a perfect lens for when you just wanna do landscape photography with something small and compact and not going to weight you down too much. However, that kit lens only zooms from 12mm to 32mm. 12 is not really ultra wide and 32 is not really long telephoto. So now let's talk about the ultra wide options first. There are plenty of ultra wide lenses for Micro Four Thirds camera. And first I want to talk about the Panasonic Lumix 7 to 14mm f4. I used to use that lens many years ago and I got some really nice pictures taken using that lens and I just enjoy it so much. It's not really that big, it's not really that heavy, image quality perfect. However, there's just one problem with that lens, and that is the lens doesn't have filter thread, so I have to adapt my square filters using some hacks and modifications that I don't really like, so I sold that lens. And then I moved on to this guy right here. This is the Laowa 7.5mm f2 ultra wide angle lens. And yeah, with the 7.5mm focal length, it is still ultra wide, and it has a large f2 aperture, making it possible to use for lower light situation, for example for northern light photography or for Milky Way photography, low light landscape, things like that. You can do it with this guy. However, this is manual focus only lens, so it's a little bit limiting for some people. But again, with the ultra wide focal length, focusing is not really an issue with this guy. And then I want to show you this guy right here. This is the Olympus 9 to 18mm f4 to f5.6. A really nice lens, to be honest. It's very compact, it's very lightweight. 9mm is wide enough most of the time, and you can zoom it to 18, which is quite flexible. Yeah, I love this lens. However, unfortunately, this lens is broken. It suffers from the ribbon cable issue, so I can no longer use this lens. However, Olympus reissued this lens recently and there's a Mark II version of this guy. Maybe you should check that one out. I haven't checked it out yet, so if any of you guys have tried it, please let me know on the comment down below. And moving on, this is currently my favorite ultra wide angle lens, and this is the Panasonic Leica 8 to 18mm f2.8 to f4. So yeah, it has slightly larger aperture of f2.8 when you zoom out to 8mm, and you can zoom it in up to 18mm, making it quite a versatile lens. And the image quality of this guy is just excellent. Sharpness is really great. Everything is contrasty and punchy, and the lens, although it looks big, it's actually not really that heavy, so perfect for landscape photography. Next, usually people don't always do ultra wide angle landscape photo all the time. Sometimes you wanna do a little bit of telephoto landscape photography, especially if you wanna isolate on a certain scenery, you want to do some distant landscape photography, and that's when telephoto lens can come in handy. My favorite telephoto lens from Micro Four Thirds is this guy right here. This is the Panasonic Lumix 35 to 100mm f4 to f5.6. If you're a follower of my channel, you might know that I almost always features this lens on all of my videos. It's because it's really that good. I mean, This is equivalent to 70 to 200mm in full frame terms, but you can fit it on the palm of your hand. It's magical. And the image quality is also really great. It's sharp, it's contrasty, it almost rivals the pro version of this guy, which is the 35 to 100mm f2.8. And I can really recommend this guy if you need a longer telephoto lens for landscape photography using Micro Four Thirds camera. Sometimes you don't want to think too much about lens choices and you just want to have one lens that can rule them all, super zoom lenses. And we have a nice choice for you right here. This is the Panasonic Lumix 14 to 140mm f3.5 to f5.6 super zoom lens. A great lens, by the way. Super zoom usually suffers from lack of contrast, from lack of sharpness, distortion, that kind of thing. But with this guy, it's just perfect. And the zoom range is equivalent to 28 to 280mm in full frame terms. Quite flexible. You can do standard landscape stuff and then you can zoom it in to get that compression, to isolate that sceneries that you see far away, things like that. Such a perfect lens. I captured so many keeper shots using this guy and I can recommend it for landscape photography. There are also plenty of other lenses that I haven't featured on this video or many of my other videos because I haven't tried them. You should look them up in the internet or in YouTube or in any other social media and learn about them as well and see if they can fit your requirements. Anyway, that wraps up today's video. So that is all about landscape photography using Micro Four Thirds camera. Hopefully this video has been interesting, inspiring, informative and entertaining as well. So please let me know down below, what is your favorite camera for landscape photography? Let's have a little bit of a discussion down there. And if you have any question, please comment down below as well. I will try my best to answer them. Also, don't forget to support my channel by liking this video, sharing this video, subscribing to my channel down below. And if you want to support my channel even further, consider using the affiliate links on the description below, purchase my Simplifying Travel Photography ebook course, or use the super thanks button to make a small donation to my channel. Thank you and I will see you on the next video. Goodbye.